Welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Struan. Today we're going to be making a good lasagna. Let me show you how to do this.
Cooking with Struan. Yeah.
So the lasagna we're making today is half mince rinsa and half Beano Reno. So all the ingredients that we're going to need is these two. 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of butter, 2 oxo cubes, 200 grams or 2 cups of grated cheese, 3 little garlic explosion balls, an assortment of spices, and 2 cups of milk. As well as that, we'll obviously need some lasagna sheets. So best to go for no soak ones that you can just put straight in the lasagna. But if you're like me and you forgot to buy some, you can just quickly make some. So you can quickly see how I did it just now. Obviously you need a pasta roller, but hey, it's quite good fun and it tastes fantastic, that fresh pasta. So let's get on to how we actually make lasagna. And I forgot, we're obviously going to need 4 tomatoes as well. Good size, 4 to 6. I've only got 4, so that's what I'm going to use. So there are 3 elements to the dish. There's the cheese sauce, which I'm going to make in the silver saucepan. There's the meat sauce, which I'm going to make in the big saucepan. And there's also obviously the lasagna sheets. So we're going to start off with the meat sauce, because that can kind of simmer away and reduce whilst we're making the cheese sauce. So I'll take you back over to the chopping board now. So we're going to put the pan onto medium heat, and we're just going to chuck in a little bit of olive oil. And as we let that heat up, we'll just quickly chop up our tomatoes and onion. Quick tip I've learned this past week is if your chopping board likes to move around a lot, put a damp paper towel underneath and sticks lovely. So we'll start by chopping the onion in half and then taking the skin off it. Chop off the top, leave the bottom there because it's kind of good to keep the onion together whilst chopping it. Now what we're going to do is go almost all the way across, then do a half slice. And then just being careful to watch your fingers, just get a nice dice going there. Make sure when you are cutting like this to keep your thumb well behind your fingers, because that's the easiest way to chop yourself. There we go, that's the onion done. So we can chuck this right into the pan because it'll have been heated up by now. There we go, and we're going to let those saute for a bit while we cut up the tomatoes. So we're going to be chopping up our 4 tomatoes. Let's get those beauties in focus. Whoa, look at them. So we just want to do a nice dice. So we're going to chew up with the meat, so kind of do it nice and fine because it's kind of creating a sauce. If you've got passata, that's what I usually use, but I thought I would do it with fresh tomatoes today. I may or may not have been watching some Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay how to cut properly videos this week, so hopefully I'll have less criticism over my cutting technique, but it's me, so you know, happy target still. So in the meat sauce, you don't have to just stick to the recipe, you can also add things like carrots, or I'm going to put some onion in. That probably should have been on the ingredients list. You can probably put all sorts. You don't need to follow a traditional recipe. So now that's all nice and diced up, that'll stew a lot easier. Now let's get up, let's return to the pan. So now that the onions are mostly sauteed, we can now add the meat. Take your mince and just crumble it up. And you don't actually have to use any mince in this, you can use just pure beans, or you can also just do pure meat, but I find that the beans give a nice texture and additional flavour to it. And who doesn't like a little bit more flavour? So while all this is going on, we can shift our attention slightly to the right, still predominantly on here, and start heating this pan up. A medium-high heat again, just to get it going, but we'll drop that to a medium once our butter melts. A great aroma's coming off that meat. Now that your mince is nice and browned, we can add the tomatoes. And we're just going to leave that to stew. So as that heats up, you're going to get the juices releasing from that tomato. Now I'll leave that on that medium-high heat, just to simmer away, but just before we let this pot go, we're just going to check the spices in it. So 2 oxo cubes, you can break these up and dissolve them in water first, but I just find that it tastes just the same and it is far more efficient just to directly crumble them on top. This is a fairly big lasagna, feeding probably around 4 people, so that's why I am using 2 oxo cubes. Get some paprika, get some cayenne, some Italian herbs, so that contains oregano, basil and parsley. Some chili flakes, and the 2 horsemen of spices, the pep, Colonel Pep, and Sergeant Salt. and then just give that nice mix around. You see that's also richened up the color a little bit with all that paprika I put in there. And then just put on a lid, just to allow it to stew. So now we're going to be looking at the right hand pan, which should have been more than heated up by now. So we're going to chuck in 50 grams of butter. Make sure you get a whisk on hand. Once that butter's melted, 50 grams of flour. Just whisk that up. So it should give you a nice breadcrumby texture. So we'll leave that in here a little bit to cook the flour. And in fact, I'm going to turn it right down to low because that residual heat will cook it, but when we add the milk, we do not want it to burn. Have your cup that you just used for your flour and filled it up with half a cup of milk at first, or 2/3. Just remember that you're going to put 2 cups of milk in total. So we're actually making a roux now, and then it will become a cheese sauce. And this is where I realized I've forgotten about the garlic. 1 second, take that off the heat. There we go, we're back. So just chuck your garlic in there. Should put it in before you put the flour in, but that will cook alongside these. So I might turn it up a little bit just to get that garlic cooked up. And we'll just have a quick look under here. So you can see that that's stewing up really nice and well. Give that a nice stir. Oh, that's really coming out well. Perfect, so we're gonna start by adding just a tiny bit of milk and just get that all whisked in until you've got a solid consistency. Now we're gonna keep repeating this process, just a little bit of milk. Now this is the trick to making a smooth cheese sauce. If you rush this process, you will get lumps. See, that's a little bit lumpy, it's a little bit inconsistent, so add a little bit more. Once you're at a fairly liquidy texture, so like around here, that doesn't really matter anymore. So I'm just gonna add my last 1/4 cup. So we don't want to burn the milk, so we're gonna keep this on a low heat, just to firm up. If you find it's a little bit too watery and it's not thickening up, then that's probably because you added too much milk or not enough flour. Back over here, we're nicely stewed up. So I'm now actually going to remove that lid and let it reduce down to a more thick sauce texture. We may as well also add the beans now, because they will also add liquid to the meat sauce. So just add that in. So the beans are great because they act as a substitute for some of the meat. So 1 can, that's about half of your meat that you don't need to use. And around now, we're going to set our oven to 180. That will heat up so that by the time we're finished reducing all this, it'll be good to go. Whilst all that stuff is reducing down, we've got 2 jobs. 1 is clean up. You will have made a lot of mess by this stage. And 2 is grate your cheese. So we're going to be wanting about 2 cups of grated cheese. I found that's around 200 grams. Your mileage may vary. Again, all my measurements are done by pure guesses, so it probably will vary. I mean, I didn't even measure 200 grams. I can't find my scales. Like, that just was a 1/5-ish of a 1 kilogram packet. Jesus Christ. This is the greatest part of it. Just give it a little tickle. And you can see as it laughs, it'll all come out. That is, yeah, 2 cups. Maybe that's 3. Yeah, that's 3 cups. Oops. So go for like 120, 130 grams. So as they reduce down, chances are one is going to thicken up faster than the other. But for me this time, the cheese sauce is a lot thicker. And you can see there's that skin layer on the cheese sauce. Make sure you just occasionally whip that into the body of it. That's alright. I've just turned this down to a very low heat, just to keep it warm, whilst I'm keeping the meat mix reducing down a bit more. We're just finishing up on the reducing. We're going to add the cheese to here. So save a little bit to the side just for your topping later on and mix that together, and you'll notice that immediately thickens right up. So just keep stirring that until it is a smooth consistency, so all the cheese is melted, and that doesn't take too long at all. And there we go, that's our cheese sauce finished. So we can chuck that up here, bring across this, and that is also just about finished now. So you can see that's got a nice thick consistency. So we'll turn both of those off. Drop it down. So we're going to start with a little bit of the mince on the bottom. So that's just to stop the bottom sheet sticking to the lasagna dish. So I'm using glass. You can use a porcelain or clay or whatever you want. Now take your pasta sheets. The great thing about making a roux is that as it's fresh pasta, you can just use some scissors to chop off the corners. That fits a bit better now. Now we've got some more mince and we're just going to start layering. Nice thin layer of the mince. So the trick is the thinner you can get it, and also the thicker your sauce is, the more likely you're not going to have a slop lasagna. But I tend to always get a slop lasagna anyway, so we'll see how this goes, shall we? Doesn't need to be perfect, but just get a decent enough coverage. There we go. Do your best to fill in the little patches. Retrieve your spoon from inside the cheese sauce. Here we go. Oh, maybe just got enough for that last meat there. But yeah, you want a little bit more than that. Last bit of the cheese sauce. So this cheese layer is a bit thicker than all the others just because you want a nice topping. Aluminium foil, and just cover that with that because we don't want to crisp in the top just quite yet. And that's going to go directly into the oven. And that'll be for 35 minutes. So that's been 35 minutes. So we're gonna take our lasagna out, remove the tin foil, and then just get our cheese and sprinkle it on top. Then we're gonna chuck that back in for another 10 minutes without the tin foil. Here it's sizzling away. Let it rest for 10 minutes and that just helps all the layers firm up. Let's take a nice good helping. You can even double it up in height if you want it to look real fancy. Thank you guys very much for watching. We've got more videos up here and over here, and if you've subscribed, then every week we'll be coming out with new Cooking with Struan videos on all sorts of different cuisines and meals. So stay tuned for that. Why do I start these so late? I'm eating dinner at 11 p.m.